Season 2, Episode 7 of the Wheel of Time TV show came on the heels of my favorite episode of the show to date, with Egwene and Madeline Madden's performance as a new Damane. In fact, it came on the heels of Episode 4 and 5 and 6, which were all very strong episodes, and unfortunately Episode 7 did not quite get there for me.
This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
In previous episodes, I'd really been singing the praises of the central story of each episode. I like how they've strung together a central plot around each episode. It's tough to do when you have so many different viewpoint characters, but I feel like each episode has done a really good job of creating a central narrative around which everything else has flowed. Same deal in episode 7 with, in this case, the Moiraine-Swan relationship drove everything from the cold open to the dramatic ending of the episode. However, I just didn't buy into the drama that they were trying to create. And that's a real disappointment because I really liked everything else in the episode quite a bit. But to stick on my main point here, my issue, and I'm not saying that this was a total disaster by any means. I just thought it was a little cheesy, a little forced, and my issue was they were resurrecting a relationship that we hadn't seen since episode 6, episode 5, whichever it was in season 1. So it's been a while, especially if you're not a book reader and you are not familiar with this. I think this might be a little even more jarring than it was for me. Anyway, so here we are back in episode 7, and the relationship between Moiraine and Swan is once again at the forefront. I'm fine with that. It's a good relationship, and they can certainly build a narrative off it. However, the show has so many different viewpoints, so many characters that we're trying to get you to care about, and now all of a sudden the forefront of an entire episode is around a character that frankly we haven't seen for longer than a season and for 2 years of screen time. And that's fine. They did a good job of bringing it back, and I honestly was liking it up until about 3/4 of the way through. I think the cold open is solid. The fans for sure enjoyed this, as we got the prophecy and the reason why Moiraine and Swan were chasing Rand, and all of that was well done. It tied into Moraine's explanation earlier to her family as to why she wasn't there when her father died, so this was great character work for Moiraine. This is all fine. However, once we get to the point where we start to drive a wedge into the Moiraine-Swan relationship, that's where I was not quite on board. And I know fans are going to say that this type of relationship drama is kind of true to the books, where there's a lot of miscommunication just due to bad communication and characters not being adults. But come on, we have 2 adults here. We have 2 Aes Sedai that really trust each other, and I feel like this was a little manufactured drama. I felt like earlier the drama between Moiraine and Lan was pretty manufactured. I'm glad that this relationship, at least between Moiraine and Lan, has started to make up a little bit. I thought Lan was much better in this episode after having pretty much nothing to do for the entire season. You see him as an active character, making decisions that are at odds with what Moiraine is doing, but it ultimately kind of works out. That's all fine. That's well and good. That was a strong part of the episode. However, when we get to the point where Moiraine and Swan stop trusting each other, I just felt that this was a little too much. I couldn't quite believe that all of this was happening in such a short amount of time. And maybe it was kind of the way that the story was being told. You knew that Swan was going to be arriving on the scene because of what you'd seen in her previous scene, and then you knew that Lanfear would be showing up shortly afterwards, so none of it was a surprise. I feel like if maybe it had obfuscated what was going on with the other characters a little bit more, it would have been a little more exciting when all of a sudden Swan appears and oh no, the plan is screwed up because, now Swan doesn't know who to trust. And I think that's fine. It makes sense that if Swan appears on the scene and sees sees what's going on, the situation Moiraine is channeling. Moiraine had just told her that she was still, this is a lie. What does this mean? Moiraine is a dark friend. That line of reasoning all makes sense. But as someone who's watching this show, I don't know, I rolled my eyes a little bit. I was like, of course she's here to see this right at this time. And then I knew that Lanfear you knew that Lanfear would be showing up shortly afterwards, as our 2 characters that we like start to have a misunderstanding and fight. Of course, the bad characters are going to come in and then further create more misdirection around who to trust for Swan because she sees, Lanfear go off with Moiraine. What does this mean? It's not like it's horribly written, but it's something, like it's a way to do a plot that we've seen many times before. I just feel like it was a little YA, and maybe my main issue is the way that the story unfolded rather than what actually happened because at no point did I really feel the emotional gut punch that we were supposed to feel as their big intimate relationship was betrayed, essentially. And I think on paper it maybe reads fine, but the way that it actually played out on screen felt a little wooden to me, or just felt like inevitable and not surprising. So this was a miss, in my opinion. The big, cutscene where we have the flashbacks of their relationship as they go through the ways, and it's like, how could you betray me, etc., etc. So it's like, come on, are we really buying this? And I wasn't. Okay, so that rant aside, like I said, I liked almost everything else in the episode. 2 other minor quibbles, which I'll get to a little bit later, but let's talk about some positives. So I think, once again, the Forsaken are represented on screen brilliantly. The acting is perfect, and the way that they're weaving them into the narrative is really well done. This is not nearly as strong in the books, but I think they knew that in the TV show they had to make the Forsaken a bigger part of it, raise the stakes, make a stronger relationship between the characters and the Forsaken, rather than them just lurking in the background for as long as they do in the book narrative. So I think this is really well done in the TV show, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens here, as now Lanfear is kind of like one of the party, and that's kind of what happens, I guess, with Selene, but we don't know who Selene's real identity is at that point. So it's interesting now to see that Lanfear, as her true self, is hanging out with Moraine and Rand and Lan and the rest of the friends, right? Other highlights, I really like how the story is unfolding off in Falma with Elaine, Nynaeve, Egwene. I think Egwene's acting is really, really strong here, and the relationship between her and Rena is nicely done. I'm looking forward to episode 8 to hopefully, really getting to stick it to Rena, and that's going to be really satisfying. I like that Nynaeve and Elaine are active protagonists here and coming up with their own plan to go get to Elaine, and it seems to be working. It's well done, and the whole thing in Falma is, I think, coming together well. It seems like everyone's going to come together. I was kind of questioning this a little bit. I don't know if I totally buy the way that Matt gets there and the way that his character is being used, but it does seem like, a satisfying way to bring everyone together for a big epic conclusion in Falma. So well done. I by the end of the season, I think they've done a good job of tying all of the characters together. Still don't know if I totally love how they separated them at the beginning of the season. I don't know if I'm ever going to like that, but I like that they're bringing them together now, and I think they've done a good job with that. Bane and Chayad show up on the scene. Awesome. Fan favorites. It's fun to see them. Nice to get a little more introduction into Giotto and Avienda's penance that she undergoes at their hands. Nice to see Perrin kind of, uncertain as to this, what he sees as a barbaric custom, but as readers, we understand what the Aiel ways are, and this totally makes sense. And I think eventually TV show watchers only will understand this. I'm glad that they are converging on the city as well, and interested to see if we ever pick up more Aiel, or if it's just going to be kind of our party of 4 showing up as, maybe to turn the tide in some way, and what I'm assuming will be a big battle in episode 8. I guess they just dissed Hopper there. It's not a party of 4. It's definitely a party of 5. Come on. Hopper counts as a +1 for sure. Going to make a big difference. And Rafe actually said in his Q&A that he really liked the way that Hopper acted in episode 8. So the acting here, the actor of Hopper, bravo to you, hopefully, in the next episode. Moraine's family, Barthanes and Anivir, really well done here. I was, kind of on the fence about these characters, mostly because they don't, they're really kind of different in the books, and any time that they've introduced characters that are just really different in the TV show, I haven't connected with them as much. But I think by the end here maybe they'll probably be a little bit more to the arc here, but I was really attached to these characters, and I had forgotten that he was a Dark Friend in the books, so I was a little shocked here. That was probably honestly the biggest shock in the episode, to see him come out as a Dark Friend, and he was prepared to, I guess, kill Moraine, which, shows the depth of the devotion to the Dark One. And I think it gives a little bit of credence to Swan, I guess, thinking that Moraine might be a Dark Friend. And like I said earlier, I do understand that decision because she saw her lie, and obviously I said I cannot lie. There are a few hints every now and then that kind of reinforce this to people who have just watched the show, especially when Varen comes in and carefully tells a mistruth and Aes Sedai lie to Lyanna to take over the shield. Like, that was well done, and Moraine reminds her of that. So the writing there is clever enough where I think even if you haven't watched the show, you're reminded of small things that play an important role. So I'm not saying the writing is terrible. I just think, that way that they pieced it together by the end, I didn't buy. Okay, back to Matt. Unfortunately, I'm still not loving Matt. I feel like the character has had some development. Like, the actual characterization of the character has come along a little bit. However, the majority of his time has been spent inside of a locked room, and his actual plot of being an active character has been pretty much a big fat zero, except for the one decision he makes to not go with Rand and trust the viewing that he gets from Min. Other than that, for 2 seasons now, we don't have much of actual reasons why to get attached to this character. And honestly, I will be very shocked to hear that someone who has only watched the show has any kind of attachment to Matt, because he just hasn't done anything. And for all of the things that other characters have accomplished, especially the characters like Nynaeve, Egwene, and Rand, to see Matt basically do nothing is really sad, because Matt's an awesome character, and I know that Matt doesn't get super awesome until later on in the book series, but I feel like, opportunity to remedy that here in the TV show, and the TV show has remedied some characters. Nynaeve, also a very, annoying, petulant character up until books 4 and 5, and Matt has similar issues in the book narrative, but they've done a great job with Nynaeve, so I'm disappointed to see, and I know that there were challenges with Matt. Obviously, the whole recasting comes with an asterisk on his character. That said, they've had an entire season here to do something with him, and in my opinion, I'm not satisfied. And then one more minor thing, I've kind of harped on this before, and it's probably annoying to hear, but I know the show doesn't have a great budget, and I felt like the effects here with Lanfear going through and blowing up the Foregate were not great. It felt like the effects that you see when you're watching the behind the scenes of something and you see how they actually do explosions in a TV show. That's kind of what I felt like actually watching the show. Didn't think that looked super great. I didn't really think the weaves around Rand when he was breaking Moraine's shield looked very cool. It looked kind of CGI-ish fake, and obviously I know it's CGI, right? But a few small things like that. When the Aes Sedai put out the fires, and it's supposed to be this cool moment, but it seems like a small fire around the Foregate. Just, the whole city is not on fire. It just seems like this tiny little area. And I'm struggling to just buy into this real epic scale of the story when you see conflicts that are centered around so few people and such a small looking city. Are there 1,000 people in the population of Carrion? It's supposed to be a huge city. Let's hope that the battle around Falma looks bigger, and I'm a little more satisfied with this. I know that this is going to be an unpopular opinion, because a lot of people don't care about this and are a little more forgiving on the TV show, and I understand it has a budget. However, I just wish that, this is me on my soapbox saying, please give the show a bigger budget so it can convince me a little bit more as to the epic scale of the big conflict of the Wheel of Time. Right now, I'm a little worried that even episode 8, the Battle of Falma, is going to look like a few hundred soldiers, facing off against each other. And it's not, I know in the books it's not a huge thing, but I don't know. I want a little more. I want to feel like the Wheel of Time is really the entire world at war, and the last battle and the fate of everyone hangs in the balance. And I don't really feel that yet. So make me a believer, please.